and thank you to everyone for joining us on today's webinar. We are, as Elodie says, going to make this a nice interactive session, so please feel free to ask any questions you want during the chat box to our panelists today. That can be Nutanix related, it can be OVHcloud related, it can even be beer related, as we have our brewmaster Tim here, who I'll introduce in a moment as well. So feel free to ask any questions that pop into your head. I'll just leave that slide for a few more moments in case there are any other people who are joining the webinar, and they can take those details as well. And of course, when we get the results through from these polls, all your answers are confidential, by the way, but we will share the themes that we see from those as part of the running commentary into all of it. So I encourage you all to kind of use the time to pick our brains, share your thoughts and so on. So I'll just give it a few more seconds just for anybody else who is arriving to take the details of the polling to get their Slido working.
Looks like it's working pretty well for people, and what they want to learn from this webinar today, it's everything, which is really good. Then positioning, roadmap, offering, cloud, more about Nutanix also, how to win more Nutanix, and business value. So it keeps going, but it gives you like a rough idea of what people want to learn today.
Okay, brilliant. Thanks for that, Elodie. And thankfully, we've got lots of great content, lots of really good things to talk around today, and we will be able to cover off the majority of those. And of course, if there is anything that we do miss during today's presentation, of course, we'll pick that up afterwards as well. And feel free to reach out to all of us, and I'll give you some details after the webinar for all of us. So I'm just going to stop sharing this screen because we want to make this much more of a discussion as a webinar rather than just a PowerPoint presentation. So we'll go straight into all of the content now. Hopefully everyone's done all the first polling slide there. So again, a warm welcome from me, and thanks for joining us for today's webinar. I'm David Devine, the Partner Program Manager for OVHcloud. Today, I'm joined by three great guests who I'll ask to introduce themselves in a moment. For today's topic, we will be discussing how to win at hybrid cloud with Nutanix and OVHcloud. Plus, of course, as we've already mentioned, there's some great beers to test accompanied by Tim, our brewmaster. But first of all, to give a bit of background on today's topic, the cloud sector as a whole is exceptionally buoyant. And to give you some statistics around that, Statistica are projecting that public cloud industry will reach around 16 billion this year. And this is reinforced by the views of IT decision makers who are saying that 42% of them have a cloud first policy. And when it comes to their infrastructure, and 96% believe that cloud infrastructure, that cloud first policy is delivering on its promise against their business expectations. And what's more, 2/3 of those end customers also admit that data center migration to the cloud is a lot more complex than they expected, and they lack the skills to deliver against their objectives. And as such, they are turning to our channel partners such as yourselves to help. And that's a great opportunity for the channel, which we're going to talk around today. So in this thought-provoking session, OVHcloud and Nutanix will discuss customers' key motivations and pain points when moving to the cloud. We'll then discuss some of the use cases that demonstrate the opportunities that Nutanix HCR solutions, powered by OVHcloud's cloud, enables channel partners to solve their customers' toughest challenges within the cloud, such as creating something that is secure, agile, and cost-effective. And then finally, we'll cover off at the end how our channel partners can enhance their profit margins with these solutions. So hopefully at the end of this webinar, aside from getting to taste some great beers and learn a lot more about beers and how to do that, you will have a good understanding of the Nutanix and OVHcloud solution and how this presents a great opportunity for you to further grow your revenues. So as I said, this is an interactive session, so feel free to ask any questions that you like during the chat box. We'll try and pick them up during the conversation. If not, we'll certainly come to people at the end if there's any that we miss. So let's, without any further ado, start to introduce the wonderful panelists that we've got today. So to the panelists, and Darren, I'll come to you first, if I may. Would you like to just introduce yourself and just share a bit about some of the trends that you are seeing in the industry right now?
Yeah, sure. And hoping I'm off mute straight away, because I normally go on to these webinars and,
yeah, that's
and
good.
I'm off mute or still on mute. But yeah, so hi everyone, I'm Darren. I work in the specialist team at Nutanix. So my focus really is hybrid multi-cloud, helping our partners, our customers and and more importantly, our account teams across all of EMEA understand how Nutanix software can deploy a hybrid multi-cloud infrastructure. And I work quite closely with OVH across all of that region as well. So a little bit about me. I'm approaching around 3 decades working in infrastructure services. I know you're saying, you know, I don't look old enough to have worked nearly 3 decades in infrastructure services, but that kind of belies some of the projects that I've been involved in, really. You know, kind of massive projects, you know, global projects, you know, massive virtual desktop environments, massive data center transformations for global companies, and really that work has sort of crossed projects, services, consulting, and architecture as well. So I think in that role, really, sort of, you know, a little bit about what I see is I'm quite privileged in my role because I get to speak to many customers across EMEA about cloud and how they use it, and how they use Nutanix with cloud, and how OVH is making an impact across those customers as well. So in the last couple of years, especially with lockdown, where we're doing everything remotely now and not traveling so much to customer sites, probably spoken to over 1,000 customers. And what's clear to me is just the great variance still out in the field, right, and how people use cloud. So 1 to 2 decades on since cloud's been around, you know, since its launch, people are doing cloud really, really well. You know, they're adopting all the sort of cloud native technologies, leveraging all platform services, cloud native technologies, modern applications, etc. But many others are just starting out on that journey. And you know, Nutanix and OVH, there's a place for any customer that's on that journey to sort of, you know, be helped by Nutanix with OVH.
Great, thank you for that introduction, Darren, and talking a little bit around some of those things that you're seeing in the channel. So Jason, let me turn to you. Would you like to, same question, introduce yourself, who you are, and tell the audience a little bit around the things that you're seeing in the industry right now?
Yeah, sure. So I'm Jason Goody, so I'm Channel Sales Manager at OVHcloud. I've got more than, not as many as Darren, but over 17 years experience in the cloud, telco and IT industry, primarily being channel and partner focused. I joined OVHcloud in 2021, and I was brought in to be responsible for building the channel within Northern Europe. This means acquiring and managing partners that are a good fit for the OVHcloud partner program. Part of the role also includes managing alliance relationships with the likes of Nutanix. So I'm the primary day-to-day contact between OVHcloud and Nutanix. What I'm seeing in the industry, more of a kind of from a sales point of view, I guess. So I've worked with hundreds of partners over the years, and recently more and more what I'm seeing is that vendors and companies in general are starting to have a much greater focus around partners in the channel. A channel-first approach, channel-first strategy is becoming more and more common now as well. This wasn't always the case, but businesses are really seeing value in working with partners. They're using them to help deliver their solutions and also fill the gaps where they can't offer certain products or solutions themselves. So I think that is really becoming more and more common in the industry now.
Okay, thanks, Jason, for your start with the insights you're giving today. And third person to introduce, the Pierre de Resistance of today's webinar, I guess, apart from the great content we're going to share about our solutions, of course, is Tim, our brewmaster. And now is a great opportunity for us to actually sample our first beer so that everyone can try some of those beers whilst you actually hear Darren and Jason talk around the solutions that we have. So Tim, I will hand over to you to introduce yourself and introduce us into our first beer and the art and science behind tasting beers.
I'll do my best. Thanks for the introduction. Yeah, my name's Tim. I come from Siren Craft Brew. We are a craft beer brewery based just outside of Reading in sunny Finch Hampstead. We've been around for 10 years. This is our 10th year. We're going to crack straight into a beer, and the first one we'll be trying together is Lumina, if you have a Lumina there. And I'm just going to share my screen as well so I can tell you a little bit more about Lumina. So hopefully you can all still see me as well. And I just want to get Lumina poured in our glass there. And I'm only going to go about halfway up. Feel free to fill it up, but this is just how I do it. Just to talk you through a little bit about what Lumina is. We launched this beer during the pandemic in 2020. Really daft time to launch a beer, but we always do sort of daft things at Siren Craft Brew. No pubs, no clubs, no venues, no bars. So it was all a can launch, and we made these can-shaped glasses to celebrate that. This is a 4.2% session IPA. So that's an India Pale Ale, which is just a bit sort of dialed down and a bit lower in ABV and alcohol. All I want you to do at the moment when you're drinking this beer is think about the aromas that you're getting, the flavors that you're getting, and mouthfeel, which might be a different new word for you, but how it feels in your mouth as you're sort of drinking it. And then we'll come back to that a bit later on. So firstly, a little bit on how to taste beer, and this is a bit daft, and you can see here my sort of cool glasses. That's my word. What I want you to do is put your hand over the top of the glass, just give a little swirl around, and then immediately just take a big sniff. That's going to release the bubbles in the beer and the gases and the aroma, and you're going to get a lot of different things there. And again, just keep it in your mind about what sort of things you're getting there. Take a little small sip, hold that in your mouth for a bit, and then just a bit of a bigger glug. So beer changes character and temperatures. If you're drinking a dark beer like a stout, you're going to want a bit of a warmer temperature. And a beer like this, ideally you want a cold temperature. I was explaining before we started how we keep all of our beers in our purpose-built cold store at a constant 4 degrees. So I've got a nice pack over here covering my beers, trying to keep them nice and cold. My glasses have been in the freezer all afternoon. So try and keep your beers nice and cold if you've got them. So just to backtrack a little bit, what is craft beer? It might be a new thing for some of you, and I've got a bit of an analogy to talk you through with this one. I'd like you to imagine, if you will, a McDonald's cheeseburger. We've all had one. They're cheap to make, they're readily available, they're cheap to buy, and they're absolutely fine. It's, you know, it's tasty, it's lovely. They do normally look like that, not how they are pictured to you, but that's fine. And then I want you to imagine this burger here, which is from Burger Bear, who used to be in Bristol and sometimes in London. This is sort of, he's put this together with love. He's gone to butchers, he's sought out ingredients. It's very well carefully thought through and created and crafted, and it's going to cost a little bit more, and it's a bit rarer to find. And that's essentially the difference between a mass-produced beer and craft beer. It's mass-produced beer, nothing wrong with it. We've all had it. It's there. It is what it is. Craft beer is going to be a little bit more expensive, but it's better ingredients. You're going to get better flavors and generally sort of independent business as well. Make sure you support independence. Just before we finalize on this bit, and I'll give back to David, this is an indication of what we did last year. So in a year, we brew well over 100 unique different beers. Which I don't think any other brewery on the planet does that. And there truly is a beer for everyone. So if you don't like beer, come in the comments, let me know later on, because I can guarantee you there is a beer for you. There's all sorts of different flavor profiles that you can get. And that's the magic of craft beer. I'll tell you a little bit more about that in a bit. Before I hand back to David, there's a little thing I like to do when I do these, which we'll do at the end of the call. So just keep this in mind. Everyone has something weird or cool in their house. Everyone. We're all weird and we're all hiding it. And I want to see your weird stuff or your cool stuff or whatever it is. So have a think, and then at the end of the call, bring it on. To give you an example, I'm a bit of a space nerd. That's Ed Mitchell's signature. He walks on the moon. That's a bit of metal that flew to the moon. And that's Buzz Aldrin's Simpsons character. That's what I'm like. So I want to see your stuff. So just for now, enjoy your Lumina and have a think about what aromas you're getting, what flavors you're getting, and then we'll talk about flavor profiles in a moment. Cheers, David.
Great, thanks very much for that, Tim. So whilst everyone is trying that first beer, Lumina, let's crack on with some of the topic that we want to talk about today and get through the first section of it. And before we get into the solutions itself and how they work, I think it's good just to set a bit of a foundation, take a step back and understand a little bit more about what we're seeing in the marketplace. So Jason, I'll come to you with this first question. And thinking about the conversations that you're having with our channel partners, what are you seeing are the main motivations and challenges that you're hearing that customers are addressing by using Nutanix in the cloud?
Yeah, sure. So what I'm seeing is the main areas customers looking to address. Number one is cost. It's always cost. Our offering is purely OPEX only, so this appeals massively to customers. Most customers don't want the CapEx upfront costs involved with on-prem solutions, so they're looking to move to the cloud partly for that reason. We have found with the competitive cost of the Nutanix and OVHcloud solution, the TCV is actually getting a lot closer to on-prem solutions. There are also no ingress and egress charges on the OVHcloud solution, so the customer won't get any surprise costs popping up 6 months, 12 months down the line, or when they start moving data around. So that's quite a big thing. Number two is time or speed of deployment. You can deploy a Nutanix cluster on OVHcloud within a few hours. You can also have the flexibility to scale quickly and efficiently. We make our own servers from scratch, so we've got stock ready to go in our data centers and ready to roll out. So they're good to go. And the third and final thing I'll cover here is just resource. So having the required resources in-house to run and manage these environments is extremely expensive for customers. So moving to the cloud negates a lot of this for them, and that's where the partners come in as well to assist.
Okay, great. So just to summarize, so cost is a key thing, as you've seen, as it always is, and that total cost of value, that how quick can customers spin up solutions and so on, and then of course that resources I have internally, that IT team, and some of those real challenges that you are seeing in the marketplace. And Darren, just coming to you on that same question about some of those things that the Nutanix and OVHcloud solution is, some of those challenges customers are being addressed. What are you seeing from a Nutanix perspective? And I know you've got something conceptual to share here, so I'm just going to share my screen again as you kind of talk around this conversation.
Yeah, this is kind of like my sort of catch-all slide that I pop up when I talk about sort of cloud or positioning, because I think, you know, when you talk about cloud, it sometimes feels like it's a bit of a trend. You know, people do it for different reasons. Sometimes it's on a whim, but you know, generally the drive to cloud is based on its key benefits, things like global reach, expert design, buying in services that aren't core to your business. You know, the whole kind of you know, architecture strategy, buy before build type approach. And sort of, you know, there's a lot of challenges that come with that, because it's not all plain sailing, right? In cloud, just like with any IT, large scale IT projects, there's always sort of challenges overall. But you know, we like to say when you couple you know, OVH with Nutanix, you get the best of both worlds, right? Nutanix being able to manage your infrastructure solutions as a truly unified hybrid cloud on a platform that's extensible, you know, capable, scalable, performant, etc., etc. But I think once people are on that cloud journey, it's really the adoption rates of cloud, and that's probably, you know, means to some people things like platform services, infrastructure as a services is fairly easy, but trying to adopt those cloud native type approach, you know, tends to be a little bit more of a challenge, and it could be down to, say, compatibility, security, or just maybe trying to jump straight into that refactoring with older type applications. Net new apps are sort of fairly straightforward to sort of build on that kind of like platform side. But you know, some companies do spend money to refactor or re-platform an app just to run in the cloud, and that doesn't necessarily deliver business value on its own. It's got to be part of you know, a wider strategy, really. But some companies do take that approach, which, you know, still quite surprises me, really. So you need that wider consideration, you know, such as fitting with an enterprise strategy that drives the appropriate technology decisions that deliver business value, just the kind of basics of enterprise or infrastructure architecture. And I've probably said this a few times, really, you know, thinking of this as the city plan that you have for your entire city, and then the building designs for each of your applications, you know, to make sure that they all use the same voltage for their electricity, the same water pressure that the whole city uses, so they can easily be slotted in. So it makes sure that everything can fit in together, and, you know, you don't have these silos and isolated islands of infrastructure. But, you know, I think typically we don't see people have that due diligence and follow that consideration, right, and follow that kind of quite strictly, especially if there's an executive decision to just go cloud first, for example. You know, that does allow companies to act and get fast, and probably links to my sort of earlier comment around, you know, it being a bit of a trend sometimes. But, you know, without fully understanding your to-be architecture, you know, that can be where you start to lead to additional costs and sort of problems with your deployment, and where then cloud, you know, starts to stall overall. So back to the sort of earlier part, when you leverage something like Nutanix, it can help, gives you control back of the virtualization layer to the customer in cloud, allows you to operate in the same way in cloud as you can on-prem. And you can then deploy that to a configurable, adaptable platform such as OVH that have their own platform as a service offering. So you're still getting that balance of what maybe the hyperscalers use alongside what a mature cloud platform provider uses, and having that in a way that's probably unrivaled by anyone else in the industry. The way that OVH have got 27 different configurations to ensure that you can provide a balanced host configuration with Nutanix, as well as integrating with all platform services. There's no other cloud provider out there that has that kind of capability to make sure that you can minimize the number of nodes you've got, deploy a balanced workload or a balanced configuration, and obviously that reduces the Nutanix licenses that's required for the customer. So, I think best of both worlds, best of Nutanix, best of OVH, best in breed together, and at a good cost for everybody, right, including the customer.
Okay, great. Thanks for that, Darren. And I'm really glad you touched on those 27 different configurations that are there, because that's something we'll talk about later on, because that really does drive that TCO that Jason talked around right at the beginning of what customers are asking for. So we'll talk about that later on, of what those different configurations look like, and how partners and their customers can leverage that. So we'll talk a little bit around some of those key drivers at a top level in the marketplace. Coming back to you again, Jason, can you tell us specifically around some of the opportunities that you are hearing around from the channel that are using this kind of solution, in particular, like some of the major use cases that you're hearing around?
Yeah, sure. So our pipeline is growing all the time for our host private cloud solution powered by Nutanix. But I'm finding that the opportunities I'm getting are driven very much, as I've said, by price, lack of resource, and quite often, weirdly, just not having a fit for purpose DR set up as well. I'm seeing a lot. But where we are seeing the most opportunities is from a DR perspective. It seems to be a good fit. And the reason our offering is proving so popular for DR is due to our competitive pricing and also the elasticity that we offer. So a good example of this would be if a customer took, for example, a 3-node cluster, because that's kind of the minimum configuration you can take from us, the lowest cost option, and they did have an event where they needed to flip over to their DR, they can then look to increase that number of nodes in a matter of hours and take those extra nodes on a rolling contract. And then once the event comes to an end, they can actually switch those extra nodes off and go back to the minimum 3-node requirement. And not many people offer that type of flexibility and elasticity that we offer. So, that is a real key driver and benefit for a DR use case that we can offer.
Okay, great. So that flexibility within the contracts to spin something up and leave it, that comes back to some of the market drivers we talked around beforehand around that agility and flexibility. So it's good to see how it ties in really, really tightly there. So Darren, from your perspective, we've heard from Jason there around some of those use cases. What are you seeing from a Nutanix perspective?
Yeah, I think same as, right? It's the 3 main use cases that you see on screen there, disaster recovery, on-demand elasticity, move to cloud. I would say DR and move to cloud are probably the 2 key ones that we see. On-demand elasticity is there, but we're talking kind of hours, to sort of deploy and scale up things. But I would say majority disaster recovery, people shutting data centers, kind of people moving sort of workloads up to cloud. And really, they cover a multitude of things, really. They cover the data center migration, expansion, footprint reduction, as well as encompassing things like modern application approaches, VDI as well. If you want to run containers, you can run those, in kind of on Nutanix, and do that, in a sort of similar way that you do on-prem, as well as doing that in clouds, really. And when you do it, going back to that node configuration, 91 terabytes of storage on a node, that's quite unique. So if you wanted to run our storage, Nutanix storage solutions on us, you can absolutely do that with that sort of capability. Or if you've got really storage heavy virtual machines, you've got that capability, as well as the platform services that OVH offer for storage as well. So, and that's certainly 91 terabytes is larger than anybody else that we deal with in cloud currently by, you know, probably a third at least, right? I think that we're seeing as well massive take up of OVH across the EMEA. It's absolutely huge for us, really, and I can't give you numbers compared to sort of what we do elsewhere, but it's absolutely up there, and if not leading in certain areas. And there's pent up demand for us across the globe as well. Some of my colleagues in the US, we're in Canada at the moment with OVH, and we're opening up a data center in the US, and there's pent up demand for that too at the moment. But I think, like, bringing it back to partners, you know, what's key, this is just as simple as selling CBL licenses. So, you know, you engage with customers, you know, it's a traditional play that you've had. Talk to them about Nutanix, sell Nutanix, you sell CBL, you sell our portfolio products. They're all fully supported on OVH as well. Customers can bring their own licenses, and I'll let OVH talk about other options you've got as well. But that's unheard of, right? Full bring your own licenses, full portfolio support. Do as you do normally for an on-prem deployment. And you know, there's obviously a change, right? This is cloud, and you know, I think traditionally you probably have this as partners. We certainly had it probably 5 years ago. That if we spoke to a customer and they're looking to move to cloud, unless you've got services that you could offer to help that customer move to cloud, your engagement, you know, is potentially at risk then. But I think what this gives you, Nutanix on OVH, gives you the ability to remain in that conversation with that customer. So Nutanix on OVH, you know, gives options to that customer they previously not had, with the ability to extend what they do on-prem into cloud. And it allows us as Nutanix, you as partners at OVH, to be part of that conversation when perhaps a few years ago, you know, we might have had to qualify out quite early.
Okay, thank you very much, Darren, and thank you, Jason, as well, just to kind of give us a bit of an overview of some of those things that you're seeing and some of those use cases. So we're about halfway through some of the content we're going to cover so far before we get into the solution itself. So we're just going to now get the opportunity to sample the next beer. But before we do that, we've got our first little bit of interaction. So we've got a Slido question for everybody. Elodie, if you can just start thing for everybody, please, so everyone can see that. And hopefully you can all start to see that on the Slido. It'd be really good so we can kind of provide feedback on some of the things that we're seeing. If you can kind of just share some of the top 2 reasons that your customers are the reasons why they are moving their infrastructure to the cloud as well. And you'll see there's a drop down box on the Slido where you can choose a couple of options, and we'll kind of feedback what everyone is seeing there in terms of general trends. So whether that's they've got a cloud first strategy, so as we've kind of talked around, Darren commented on there, it's what the business has chosen to do strategically. It could be it's primarily because of a cost control, cost reduction. It could be because they want that agility and flexibility that cloud gives, which you don't necessarily get from more static on-premises. Could be a security issue. There's loads and loads of conversations today around security now being in a much better place in cloud than what it was 2 years ago, and it's now seen as a good solution to provide a secure infrastructure. Could be from DR and spinning something up there as a short-term thing, and of course internal skills gap. We all know about the shortages of skills that our end customers have as a huge pain point. Perhaps they're looking to offset that by pushing that out to you as channel partners from the infrastructure, so you can manage that and wrap your services around it. So we'll hand over to Tim now, just to kind of go through our second beer. We have a think around some of those top 2 reasons you're seeing, and then we'll have a look at what some of the answers are of your feedback.
Good times. Thanks very much again. Right, I'm just going to share my screen again. When I left you, I was asking you what flavors were you getting. So normally this would be a bit more of an interactive thing, but hopefully you were getting something like these sorts of notes. So some sort of overripe melon, maybe tropical fruits, stone fruits, grapefruit, etc. And these flavors in beers like this all come from hops, which is the bag of what you can see on the screen. And these are the specific hops that you can see in Lumina. So what are hops, you might be saying? Well, this is a hop. It's a product that grows on a tree just like this, or on a bush just like this. And in about about 1620, English settlers arrived in the US, and they brought with them English hops and found sort of New World hops and cultivated them. These grew across the US, and eventually these hop farms landed in the Northwest, or the Pacific Northwest. And that is about where I think it's something like 99% of all US hops grow, and that's about something like 95% of the global figure, or 90% of the global figure. So a lot of hops come from that different place. This is how some people would get hops. We made a brew with these hops here, which were completely frozen, flash frozen on the field, and then they came to us like this. And if you look very carefully on that little picture on the right there, you can see some little yellow dust. And I'll zoom in again. That is what you're seeing there, which is lupulin, and that is the sort of flavor in hops. And hops are grown. Some to be more grassy, some to be more sort of floral tasting, some to be more of citrus or fruity, etc. And us as brewers, our job is to sort of balance these hops together with other elements of the beer to create the sort of beer that you're having. This is how we use hops. They go into the kettle like that, and there are various different types. So if you've heard of hops before, you'd have probably thought of something on the right hand side there, sort of kiln dried classic hops. And if you go to the pub and you have like a pint of like a hand pulled beer that's kind of that rust color, sort of a classic ale as you'd imagine, that's the sort of hops that you're going to be using in that. The problem is you get a lot of vegetation in that, and the vegetation has no impact on the beer, no flavor. It's only those little yellow bits that you saw. So when you move over towards the far left here, these pelletized hops, that's kind of better because you're losing some of that vegetation, and that's generally what we use. And then to the middle of that, the liquidized and the flash frozen hops, that's what brewers are using nowadays more and more. Essentially, you flash freeze the hops, you smash them up, and then you divide out all the green and all the yellow, and then you pelletize it, so you're only getting those lupulins. That means that when you've got, say, 1,000 litres of beer, you can get more hops into it. A beer like Lumina would have about 70 kilograms of hops into it, and different beers would have sort of higher or lower amounts of hops. So on to the next beer, which is this one, Pastel Pils. This is something a little bit different. This is a Pilsner, and both Lumina and Pastel Pils are in fact gluten-free. So my other half is gluten-free, eats gluten-free, and that means I eat a lot of gluten-free bread, and it's rubbish. I absolutely loathe gluten-free bread. I love bread. Gluten-free bread is rubbish. So people walk into a bar and they say gluten-free beer, and they think, oh, that's going to be rubbish. Untrue. It's still brewed with wheat. It's still brewed with gluten. And then we use enzymes which essentially eat the gluten and bring it back out. So a beer like Pastel Pils, this is going to have about 33 kilograms of hops in about 1,500 litres of sort of total beer product. So a lot less hoppy. It's got German hops, so Saltus Ballet, Tattinger, and very clean, crisp malts. So with this one, you're going to get more of a sort of bready notes and a little bit of floral and that classic sort of lager flavour. Hops on the screen there, Sapphire and Erzbrugger. There we go. We've also got a German lager yeast in this. Now, before we move on again, because I'm tight on time on this one, I'll tell you a little bit about lager. Lager is actually a process. To lager is to age. So you lager a beer down, and lagering takes a while, but the more you do it, the sort of cleaner and better your product's going to be. During the lockdown, we had a lager in tank called Santo, which was the only lager we'd done at that point, and we had it in tank for 64 days because it had nowhere else to go. And this meant that Santo came out so crisp and clean, that really biting, crisp, bitter, but still fruity flavour that we love. And it got us really in love with lagers. So we do quite a few lagers now. We've done a barrel-aged lager. We've done a lager infused with oak, which was actually near on 8%. But this one has become part of our regular output. So hopefully you enjoy it. I really love it for those sort of limey, zesty notes underneath that sort of breadiness that you get from the so there we go. So I'll go back to the panelists because we've got a lot to get through, but what I want you to think about is what else, apart from the hops I've introduced, could be bringing flavour to the beer while you're drinking this, and enjoy. Any questions, put them in the comments and I'll reply straight away. Cheers, chaps.
Thanks very much for that, Tim, and I hope everyone is enjoying sampling the second beer that we have for the afternoon. Just coming back to the Slido results, Elodie, it'd be good just to get a quick overview that everyone can kind of share what the outcomes are in terms of that first question that we did, or the second question that we did there, all around top 2 reasons your customers are moving their infrastructure to the cloud. Can you just give us a quick overview of some of the percentages of what we're seeing and what the top 2, top 3, top 4?
Sure. So 64% responded cloud first strategy. 55 of them answered infrastructure agility and flexibility, and the third one is disaster recovery. And cost benefits is 18%, internal skills gap is 9%, and 0 about security.
Also, some very different results there compared to some other polls that we've seen. So certainly, obviously, that cloud first strategy is critical for their customers, and Darren, that's something that you touched on beforehand, and that agility and flexibility, exactly those things that we kind of talked around, and that ability to be able to just burst as and when. I think when we look generally at our observations we see in the channel, customers tend to be just wanting that ability just to spin up things sometimes a little bit last minute, and to really use cloud the way it's designed to be, to really move things into the cloud or upload workloads very, very quickly, and then also they'll switch them up when they want to do so they're not committed, and really drive the efficiency out of their budgets. So thanks very much for everyone to give us some feedback on that first question, and thanks Elodie for sharing the results. So let's go on to our next question for Jason and for Darren. And just thinking about the channel partners who are listening today, Jason, coming to you first again on this question, can you give some examples of some of the instances where how partners are helping their customers overcome these challenges that they're facing, the ones that we talked around before we had the second beer?
Yeah, sure. So this is really where the OVHcloud flexibility and elasticity comes to the fore. So if a partner can promise to get multiple nodes live in a matter of hours, that's compelling for their customers. It gives them an edge over the competition because most of the competition can't do that. Also, with regards to cost, everything comes back to cost, but our solution allows partners to offer that fully OPEX only solution, and our pricing is really keen as well. And lastly, I guess around the sort of lack of in-house resource, end customers will rarely, well, these days seem to rarely have that expertise and resource to roll out or manage this type of complex environment. So this is where partners come in and they offer that extension of the customer's team and take the pain away from them. So those are sort of the 3 main areas really where I see that partners are helping their customers overcome the challenges.
Okay, Darren, what about you? You seen something similar to that, or is it quite different from the Nutanix side?
Yeah, I think similar really. I think it's kind of it's about the ability to execute for customers, right? And partners are a part of that. So we all talk about the elastic cloud. If you can promise a full cluster in days and scale out within hours, without having to change to a completely different platform, that's a massive capability for the customer. But they need to be able to get to that position where they can have that adoption and have that scale. So I think maybe we see some customers want an onboarding service, for example, a jump start to the customer's OVHcloud journey. That would be a key benefit for the customers and partners as well. Help simplify adoption for some customers as too. You've obviously got Nutanix migration tools that you can use to move work from on-prem, even out of the hyperscalers, onto Nutanix on a cluster in OVH. And so, reduce their cloud costs as a result if they're in other hyperscaler clouds, because we see many people looking for other options, repatriation or, rehosting elsewhere. And I think, in OVH, you get the benefit of that reduced cost, right? Really good cost-effective options in OVH for the hosting. And as a customer, you then get the ability to manage that entire virtualization layer, the overcommit, thin provisioning, all with the benefit of Nutanix and the surround services that OVH have.
Okay, great, thank you. So we talked quite a bit about challenges. We talked around some of the things that partners are doing around the solution. So let's get into the solution itself now and take a look at that solution. Jason, do you want to provide an overview of what that solution looks like? And just to help everybody as we hold this conversation together, I'm just going to share a visual aid so everyone can kind of see what that looks like. And Jason, do you want to just talk everyone through what they're seeing here?
Yeah, sure. So I won't go into this too sort of deeply or technically, but the pre-deployed Nutanix cluster is built on Nutanix qualified bare metal servers. So we offer 27 variants, as we've mentioned before, of high-grade HCI servers. The advantage of so many variants means that it's extremely unlikely that a customer solution will need to be overspec'd. So as you can see there, there's a minimum of 3 nodes per cluster and a maximum of 15 nodes, but multiple clusters are an option. You then get the Nutanix software stack integrated. And then from there are 2 options. You can either take the fully packaged offer that includes the licensing from us, or we do offer a bring your own license offer, where we provide basically the bare metal servers and the partner or customer will provide the licensing directly from Nutanix. So either or, it depends what the customer wants to do. We then offer backed off support for the hardware, and the partner will offer always the first line support to the end customer. And they also then offer the full managed service wrap. So that's the partner value add. We can offer professional services if required with regards to the migration, but that's entirely up to the partner if that's required.
Okay, great. Darren, it sounds like we've talked around this beforehand, how being able to offer Nutanix in the cloud rather than just on premises is quite game changing for some of the partners, because it's something that helps them get into conversations they weren't in before. So based on the solution here that we're talking around, how does this help broaden the Nutanix offering for the channel?
So I suppose really it's a couple of things, right? It's extending that conversation with a customer when they want to go into cloud and giving them an option to deploy Nutanix in another location, right? And so to what Jason covered there, you can do this via bring your own licenses. So a customer that's already got Nutanix, you can sell more CBL, you can sell our portfolio, and you can do that just as traditionally as you would do. There's also the pre-packaged offerings that OVH have, and OVS or Jason comment on those. But it's a similar outcome for the user, but it's just a different subscription. So if they want to move to the more CapEx, so OpEx type model, you've got package. If they want to go CapEx, you've got the bring your own license type, really. But ultimately, it's just Nutanix software on OVH hardware, best of breeds in both of those areas. Then you're giving the customer a true hybrid cloud solution with all of the Nutanix portfolio support to boot, with that license mobility. And I think really, this is, everyone says they're doing, hybrid cloud, but they're using different consoles to do different things in different locations. What this gives the customer and what it gives the partner talking to a customer is the chance to unify that hybrid cloud and integrate that fully with your on-prem environment if you're an existing Nutanix customer. If they're not an existing Nutanix customer, then you've got the option to say, right, well, okay, if Nutanix adoption is a thing for you, you can do it here, and you can do it without having to buy hardware for it, without having to have your own data center. And we see some people with net new adoption of Nutanix deploy their first clusters in OVH.
Okay, great. And can you give a specific example of what a solution could look like? Perhaps some of the outcomes that have come from that, the results from this use case.
Yeah, I'll pop a link in the chat in a bit, really. But we've got the item up on
for this
little
now. Use case we've got here, yeah, for video.
I'll pop the link to that kind of validation, that testimonial the customer's got. But basically, this company hosts their own business intelligence software solution on Nutanix with OVH, right? And it integrates with some of the security offerings that OVH have, like a content delivery network. I think they use Cloudflare in this example. So they're using Cloudflare to deploy these SaaS solutions, different locations around the globe. But underpinning that, the hosting is all on Nutanix. So it's a really good example of where Nutanix is integrating with the platform services within OVH as well. The partners here, interestingly, they acted as consultants and integrators for this project. and taking on board some of the day-to-day management, you know, that might not fit every partner relationship, but it just shows you the sort of capability that's there. So it's a great example where partners have leveraged Nutanix and OVH to benefit the customer, reduce their costs while improving security, delivering quality of service, etc. So I'll post up the customer testimonial. I'll pop that in the chat so you've got kind of a link to that if you want to sort of download that and look at the full testimonial from that customer.
Okay, great. Thanks for that explanation, Darren. And of course, we've kind of just covered an overview of the solution there, that everyone gets a feel for what that looks like. But after this webinar, we'll send out some more details. There's much more information around what that looks like, the different variants and so on, so you can really see for yourself how that shapes up. And of course, if you've got any specific opportunities or just out of curiosity you want to see what that could potentially look like and see what the art of the possible is, of course you can reach out to any of the three of us here, and we can kind of share some more information around that in terms of what that looks like that's relevant for your particular customers and the use cases that you have. So we've talked around the compelling solution that we have and how that can deliver against customer needs. So and now I just want to come to you, Jason, on a question just to understand and share how the solutions helping partners improve their profitability and add value. So can you talk a little bit around, from a partner perspective and from their profitability models, how this solution can really help them capitalize on selling these kind of solutions into their customers?
Yeah, sure. So this is what obviously the partner's going to be keen to find out. What do they get out of it? How do they make money on it? So when requesting a price from myself, the partner will generally come to me. We'll give the partner an end user cost, and that will have partner margin built into that. You can then also gain extra margin using our deal registration process. So the overall margins available are very competitive in the industry based on feedback that we've received to date. Also, there is a separate charge that we give to the end customer, or to the partner, should I say, for the business level support that we cover. So the partner has the option to wrap that into their own support costs and add extra margin on top of that as well. So there's three different areas where you can gain margin basically from this. I won't talk about actual figures because obviously it will vary based on the solution. But with regards to actually adding value, so OVHcloud, we are not an infrastructure provider. Sorry, let me rephrase that. We are an infrastructure provider, pardon me. Only we're not an MSP, so we don't offer the full managed service wrap. That's what the partner does. So we are non-competing with our partners from that point of view, because we can't do that. So we rely on partners to do that part. We literally provide the hardware and the infrastructure. They then provide the management and that wrap and look after the customer. So from that point of view, we're non-compete, which is good for partners. So we're never going to be competing for the same piece of business, essentially. We offer the bare metal. We can offer the licensing, as mentioned before, but the partner will offer that managed service wrap and the first line support to the end customer all the time. The customer will always go directly to the partner for that first line support, which is then backed off to us. The partner will always own that overall relationship with the end customer, and they can bring us in as and when they need, and we're always available. But it's the partner that owns that relationship with the customer, which we think is really important. It works that way.
Okay, and Darren, turning to you on this particular question for the partner perspective, how are you seeing it's helping them solve the problems that their customers have and help them from a profitability and value add perspective?
Yeah, so I'm going to keep this one really brief because I'm trying to work out what I'm going to grab for Tim's little session here to sort of see what I can go. But I think really, you know, partners can stay in that conversation, right? But customers get to still leverage those partners that they know and trust to integrate their solutions and on their cloud journey, and that doesn't always happen, right? On a cloud journey overall. So I think that's kind of one aspect. And then really, you know, you're retaining in that conversation to sell Nutanix CBL licenses as well as services or support if you want to go down that revenue as well, or go down that avenue as well. So I think, you know, keeping that sort of really short, keeping the conversation and continuing to sell, you know, and do as you do today with Nutanix customers, new or existing.
Okay, well that's great. So thank you, Jason. Thank you, Darren. We're just coming up to wrap up now into the last few bits and pieces before we have a look at our third beer that Tim's going to walk us through. So just to kind of give a final summary for all of the listeners today, Jason, what do you think are the key takeaways in terms of the potential and the opportunity for our channel partners today?
Yeah, so I think from OVHcloud perspective, so particularly the key takeaways are, one, we are non-competing with our partners, as I literally just said. So we can't do the managed service piece. We can only transact these deals through channel partners. So, you know, that as a partner, I think that sort of comforts them, which is good. Price is the next one. Our pricing is extremely competitive. We're coming out on average 40% cheaper than the hyperscalers, apples for apples, on a Nutanix solution. And that is based on Nutanix data from their cloud economist team as well. Third, I think speed of deployment, you know, something worth bearing in mind. Our clusters and nodes are deployed within a few hours. Servers are built by us and they're on standby in the data centers and good to go. And finally, I think it's just the margin and deal reg. So we offer really competitive margins for our partners, and the deal registration process is simple and easy, and it protects our partners as well. So I think those four key things really should stand out from a partner's perspective.
Okay, thank you for that, Jason. And Tim, from your side there, the same question, what are your key takeaways as a summary from today's webinar?
Yeah, so I think, yeah, keeping it and sort of echoing a lot of what Jason said, right? Nutanix and OVH, we're both channel-led organisations, so you guys are key to, you know, our success, and we can help you, you know, kind of provide the technology and the platform to go out and solve your customers' problems. Cost is absolutely massive, right? And again, would echo that. The kind of cheaper than public cloud. Public cloud for infrastructure as a service is not, you know. And I was glad to see that on the poll, that it didn't show up as one of the major drivers to move to cloud to save costs, especially with virtual machines, isn't really everyone's sort of first choice. So this is key. And when you can, you know, offer the same capability at lower cost, you know, people should be tearing your hands off for this. So I think really just that final point, to reiterate what I said earlier, is OVH provides this chance to accompany or lead customers on their cloud journey alongside Nutanix while you retire your quota by selling CBL, if that's the way you want to go, or services as well.
Okay, thank you very much, Darren. So that concludes all of the content that we're going to cover from the solution today. Hopefully it's given some really interesting food for thought for everybody. Obviously, we're not just finished yet, we've got another beer to go. And just before we go into the next beer, we've just got another Slido question that we'd just like to ask you as partners, and this is very much around how it help us really understand how we can help you in terms of capitalize on this opportunity. So I'll let Elodie get the next question available for you in the Slido app. And the question, for those of you probably looking at it by now, what are the top 2 challenges you face as a partner when offering Nutanix cloud solutions? And there's a few options there. Just let us know which are the top 2 that you're seeing, whether that is educating customers about the benefits and their commercial options of what does that look like if they move, what does that mean from a perspective of cost and the business benefits it provides, and really driving that value back upwards and across within your customer's organization and those stakeholders. Is it building that business case for it as well as part of that same thing? Is it being able to find a solution and match it against what the customer's needs and get it so that it's fit for purpose in terms of right sizing? Is it internal knowledge that you have yourself of your technical or sales teams need to upskill or have a more rounded view in terms of what the skills are, the knowledge that is needed? Also, is it an internal transition you as a business are going through, as many have or are doing, of that traditional sales model of moving from selling CapEx into moving into selling more OpEx and the sales model internally? So it'd be good just to get your feedback there. And again, we're going to try the next beer now, and we'll Tim will also do the icebreaker, and then we'll come and we'll share the results of what we see from that slide out. So just whilst everybody is just going through that, some of you may want to be dropping off very quickly afterwards. So just as before we try the next beer, so what I'm going to do, just in case you are, just so you have all of our details and know who everybody is here. So here you can see, here's all the contacts, of course. We will send to you the various information from today, so you can see all of that. This webinar is recorded as well, so it will be posted somewhere so you can read that, and there's a link at the bottom there if you want to find out more about OVHcloud and the program. And of course, Darren, Jason and myself, we will be able to come along and speak to you around any questions that you've got. So anything that you have, you'll have our contact details after this webinar, so that you can Ask us any questions and feel free to interact with us so we can look at how we can help you on that journey. And I'll share this slide a little bit later on as well, just at the end when we close. So that's everything we want to talk around. That's wonderful around Nutanix and OVHcloud. I'll hand over to Tim again now, who's going to talk to us now about the third beer that we have, and we can try that one whilst we also have a little bit about our little competition that Tim set us at the beginning, and just see some weird and wonderful things that everybody has provided. And of course, just a final quick reminder to everybody, if you've got any questions, you can ask. We as panelists will be staying on. That could be a question to Tim, it could be to Jason, or to Darren, or to me around Nutanix or OVHcloud. Tim, thank you.
Absolutely. I would just remind as well, obviously it was due to finish at 5:30. If anyone is shooting off, that's absolutely fine. We do have a discount code, which, hang on, I will tell you, is tasting15. So if you use that at sirencraftbrew.com, tasting15, get 15% off. But we are sticking around, so beer's here to be enjoyed in the moment, and this is the moment, right? So there we go. Right, so before I left you, I was asking what else could be bringing flavour to the beer. And normally I'd just go straight into talk about that, but I figured let's get another one open. And I figured that because I've finished my other two and I want another one. So I'm going to open Mesmerist, which is currently my favourite beer that Siren Craft Brew we make, because it's absolutely spectacular. I have a 9-month-old son, so a 3.4% pale ale, absolutely fantastic for me. If I want a beer, it's low ABV, it's perfect. Now, there's a real reason why we're brewing a 3.4% beer, which is quite simply duty at the moment. If you don't mind me telling you a little bit about duty and the sort of the governmental side of brewing. But so the new duty on alcohol, anything less than 3.5%, £9.27 per litre of alcohol in the product. So for 1,000 litres, that's £315.18 in duty. If you make it 3.5 to 8.5%, it's 21.01%, pence per litre of alcohol in the product. So for a 5% IPA, that would be about £1,050, which is obviously 3 times more. And we currently have a beer called High Definition, which is an 11.1% triple IPA. The duty on that works out as £3,163. So with these new duty changes, you're going to see a lot less higher strength beers and a lot more under 3.4% beers. So get used to seeing more 3.4% beers or table beers, etc., like that.
So is that a chipper, not a dipper? That one.
That's it. Yeah, no more dippers, or fewer dippers, unfortunately, if that's your thing. If you look at the Siren Craft Brew blog, there's a great piece about table beers that I wrote. So this is Mesmerist. This is a style we've been playing with for a while, knowing that these duty changes were coming, to try and get sort of maximum flavour out of a lower ABV beer. And again, this is all due to the hops in this. So you see on the screen there, Mosaic Cryo and Citra Cryo. These are cryogenically frozen hops. As I said before, they take the fresh hop from the field, they cryogenically freeze it, they smash it up, they take out all the green vegetative waste, and they just leave us with the yellow lupulins, and that's all the flavour. So when we add that to the beer, you can only add a certain amount of hops before things are sort of spilling over. So we can add more pure flavour. So from a 3.4% beer, you get an awful lot of flavour. And I've also put there wheat and oats. So this is what I would hope some of you would have said for other things that affects flavour in beer, is the malted barley and the malts. So there's loads of different types of malts that you can use. So you can see bags of Golden Promise and Marisota here. Marisota sounds like a potato, but it's a malt. And that's probably the most common malt that you're going to see used in beers. Barley is kilned at different temperatures for different outcomes. So more roasted, like the top photo there, and more lighter, like the bottom photo. The lighter malts would be your lager malts that you would see in things like Pastel Pils. And that gives sort of bready, nutty, and more of the sort of malt sweetness Malt's very sugary, so you get that sweetness. The medium roasted malts, you're going to get more sort of honey, toffee notes. And then the dark malts is where you're moving into your stouts with your coffee, chocolate, toffee sort of notes as well. And that real roasty notes. Our head brewer, Sean, designed a beer called Origin Story, which has 20 different malts in. Only one hop, but 20 malts. And it is just an epiphany, like a cacophony of, I don't know the word I'm looking for, but just an absolute world of flavor. It's so good. You go in, you get all these different notes every time you drink it, and it's lovely. So with a beer like Mesmerist, you've got wheat and oats as well. And oats, the same as if you imagine a bowl of sort of oats in the morning, that sort of thick mouthfeel. Mouthfeel is something I mentioned earlier. That brings that sort of more, that sort of not chewier, but sort of creamier mouthfeel that you can feel when you're drinking. The lager would have been a bit thinner, and these sorts of beers add that sort of depth and creaminess, and that is largely from the oats. Now, there's a couple of other things as well. Yeast, which is symbolized by our brewer on the bottom there, holding up a plate, and our lab tech, Ed, on the top left. So we have a lab at Siren Craft Brew. We do a lot of science. Everything is sort of checked. Our QC is unbelievable. But different yeasts bring different things. So we have a house yeast. We could brew a beer with our equipment, our kit, with a set malts and hops. And another brewery could brew the exact same beer to the exact same recipe, but their house yeast, and it would be a completely different beer, because the way the yeast interacts with those sugars. Belgium yeasts, you probably know, sort of Belgian beers, etc. And then wine yeasts, obviously very different. Lager yeasts act differently. Yeast esters are the sort of scents and the aromas that you get from the yeast, and they turn. That's what turns the malt and the alcohol into alcohol and CO2 as well. Really does accentuate aroma and flavour. But also water. So in Finch Hampstead, we have very hard water, and it's a very difficult thing to keep the brewery and glassware and stuff clean. It always looks dirty, but it's not. It's just hard water. Really, really good for stouts, not so good for head retention on IPAs. So what we got was this water plant that you can see in the top right, which essentially strips out the water. 2 glasses of water you can see in my photo on the bottom right there are completely different. One of them is from the tap, and it's the Finch Hampstead hard water. One of them is through the water plant, which is completely stripped out and blank, and we can then build our own water profile. So you're looking for sulfates, which pronounce fruitiness and that soft mouthfeel, versus chlorides, which pronounce sort of bitterness and a clean crisp. So something like the lager will be chloride heavy. Something like this, which is softer and thicker and that sort of fruity mouthfeel, that's going to be sulfite heavy. So there's an absolute ton that goes into brewing that you really don't sort of see at the sort of the front end of it. And people always talk about hops, but the water profiles and the malt profiles are really things I'm really passionate about, because they really do change the nature of beer. So we also have, excuse me, I'm going to keep drinking Mesmerist. Great train beer, Mesmerist. We also have Soundwave. Now, Soundwave's probably our most famous beer in the box, and I'll just talk you through Soundwave. That's just dripped on my laptop. One of the first beers we ever brewed, and we started 10 years ago. This is probably one of the most standout beers of the industry, really, because it's been around for 10 years. We have evolved it to sort of stick with modern times, but again, great beer. I'm just going to pour some Soundwave out here. We take Soundwave very, very seriously. We have a tasting with our lab manager every Friday, where we taste different versions. We trial different things, and we're always tweaking it just to make sure it's the absolute pinnacle and the best it can be. The 2 beers when you're going out looking into pubs that you're going to see is probably Soundwave and Lumina. So do look out for them. I don't know which way I'm twisting things here. There we go. Do look out for them. Soundwave, beautiful beer. Citra, Simcoe, Chinook, Columbus. These are all New World American hops, full of flavour. You're going to get a lot of tropical notes in there. There's a bit of sort of pineapple-y note, a bit of that overripe melon that I mentioned before. And that's the reason it's another one of our beers that's won a Great Taste Award last year. And again, wheat and oats for that sort of lovely creamy mouthfeel. Some of you might not be expecting these sorts of hazy beers, but this is what beers look like nowadays, and they're delicious. Any questions, do put them in, and I'll be there to answer them. So on to the show me something weird or cool. Now, we normally do this with everyone on the call, all the participants, but I don't know if everyone is getting their cameras on or whether it's just our esteemed panel here, which puts a lot of pressure on you guys.
So it's either like literally we can't have the video from the attendees, but if everyone is okay, I can just like make every attendee being a panelist for us to be able to see everyone and just like to finish the webinar like that.
I'm up for it.
Sounds good.
Okay,
Let's
perfect.
do that. There's enough people who have kindly stayed on, so that's
Okay. So the audience, just get ready. I'm going to switch.
I'll stop sharing my screen, but do note here, it's sirencraftbrew.com, and you can use tasting 15. That's going to take 15% off at checkout. If you're near Reading, we're in Finchampstead, or if you ever come our way, we do brewery tours. We have our tap yard. We're open throughout the week. Friday, Saturday, Sunday, we have street food providers, and we're making our own street food nowadays as well. So do come and see us. Great fun. Any questions about the brewing process or how we do things? Please do ask. Right. Hopefully, some people have got some weird stuff or some cool stuff.
So I have. I jump in first to kick off. So I mean, like you, I'm a bit of a frustrated astronaut, right? I kind of grew up, love all the old kind of Apollo program and all that. Space shuttle, not so much.
You might have already won.
And so there you go. And, so, but I can't really be an astronaut, so I've done the next best thing. So I'm in a space diving, so I go kind of sub-aqua diving. But then there's a load of history that comes with that. Anyway, to keep it short, I've got a collection of explosion-proof divers Navy lamps. So these are this one's from like kind of the 1930s. This is a submarine. Now these are really heavy. They're like 1 or 2 kilograms, and I've got about 5 or 6 of them. This one here is huge. They're explosion-proof. They're old Navy divers lamps. They're kind of sitting up on my shelf. I've got 5 of these. There's 2 more that I'm looking out for. That they're quite expensive. They're solid brass, chromed. And like I'm looking for older versions that I can strip the chrome off and polish up the brass on. So, some of them work, some of them don't. But there you go. That's my weird item, right?
I absolutely love it, and it's something that I've never seen before on one of these, or I think ever anywhere. So it's fantastic.
Cool.
Who else is going to be brave enough to come on camera and show me something weird?
I can actually. It's just like I'm not at home, but I can share that. So I'm at the office.
Yeah.
And literally, I don't know whether you can see it, but it was part of like a souvenir that I bought when I was in South Africa, and it was supposed to be a penguin, but I don't know what happened to the head actually. But I just kept the body because it's soft, and like I just use it as a anti-stress ball. So I have like the official one on chess ball like that, but then I was just like thinking that this one is soft, and it's still something like a souvenir that I had from my trip. So it's a bit weird. I just keep it like in my bag. So I don't know whether it's
follow-up question. How stressful is your job that you've got 2 stress balls?
No comment on this one.
I mean, I work for a brewery. We just drink for a living, so I'm not really used to a stressful job.
Oh, I used to drink for a living also. It's just like event manager, when we stress, we just drink. That's okay. And I'm French, so wine, obviously.
All right, so Mehdi and Pete and Sam, I've seen your cameras go on. So who's got something weird for me?
Not necessarily weird, but continuing the space sort of theme.
Nice.
in my office stroke bar. I have.
Oh my goodness me!
Oh, look at that!
that's
Look at
impressive.
I've got a Millennium Falcon and I've got a Saturn V rocket with launcher in the corner.
Good man, right?
I love the Saturn V. I'm so excited.
See,
The,
Pete,
la-
what do
the
we do?
launcher was built from 3 other sets, so it took quite a while.
Pete, why haven't we done meetings there in that bar? I mean, come on, right? Next time we have a catch up, it's got to be there, right?
You're always invited, Darren. Got to go up to Manchester though.
Good man, right?
Nice. Mehdi,
I'm not at home. I'm at OVH. I'm from the north of the France, so I didn't get the beer, and
Oh, no.
I can't buy it. I have to ask to my colleague in UK to have a few beer from you, brewery.
We'll raise one for you.
Thanks.
What about you, Sam?
Definitely can't compete with Pete, but I mean, I'll be honest, I forgot you asked to see weird things, but I have got a an alcohol kind of cupboard, I guess, in the corner, which now I feel a bit stupid about that Pete's shown us all his bars, so I'm just going to sit quietly in the corner.
Anything alcohol related is good, mate. I tell you.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Especially if they're half drunk as well.
Jason or David, I don't think we heard from you either. So did you have anything?
Best I can do based on the Star Wars theme is a Lego Yoda on my desk.
Love it. Love it. I have a Lego ISS yet to build. Good times. David?
I have to say I've failed completely miserably, and I'm looking at my desk to see if there's anything I can grab and kind of show. And it's a rather mundane looking desk, I have to say. I was too engrossed in the webinar to run off and grab something, and
Fair play.
beforehand. So I'm failing more miserably than Sam in this instance.
Oh, I don't think you failed because you were holding this whole thing together and introducing an important and interesting webinar. So, all right, if no one else is going to jump on, then definitely Pete is the winner, I'm afraid, because he's got a Saturn V rocket.
Pete, yeah.
I love that. So if someone, Pete, if you can drop me your address, I will send you out some beers for that bar of yours.
Cool, thank you.
Not a problem. If anyone's got any questions as well, let me know. If not, I hope you've enjoyed all the beers.
Has anybody who's left got any questions? Either for us as a panelists or for Tim?
Not from me, all good.
No. Okay, great. Well, for those that are left, thank you very much for taking the time to attend today. As I say, all the information that we have provided, we'll send it out to everybody with our contact details should you need them. And we look forward to speaking to any of you in the near future to talk more about the solutions and see how we can help you to give your cloud sales with OVHcloud and Nutanix a kickstart. So thank you very much. Enjoy the beers and enjoy your weird and wonderful items that you've been able to share with us today.
Thanks all.
Thanks a lot,
Okay.
everybody. It was nice.
Thank you.